The basement will not be open for fellowship today, but we'll be having that again next week. So yeah, now I have the privilege of introducing our speaker for today, Caroline Park. Let's give her a warm welcome.
Thank you, Allison, and thank you, worship team, for the beautiful and welcoming worship time. Happy Pride Month to you all. So, as you all know, it's the first Sunday of June, and we are starting a new sermon series in commemoration of Pride Month to celebrate all of our LGBTQA siblings in our community and beyond, for all of who you are. We're calling this sermon series, Creating Space for All to Thrive. I hope this will be an opportunity for us as a community to pause and reflect on what it exactly is that we are pursuing. What are we called to as a community that welcomes and celebrates people of all sexual and gender identities, and all people, regardless of their race, gender, class, or ability? What does it mean to create space for all to thrive? What are we required of in this pursuit? So for the month of June, we will discuss this topic from different angles, but today's talk will be about these more big picture questions. In certain religious thinking, issues such as inclusion and justice are not central to faith. In fact, bringing up social justice is sometimes frowned upon, considered even a dirty word. The logic is that the social issues are separate from spiritual things. Focusing on them is taking eyes off the most important thing. But these social issues are really about how we treat others and how we engage with the world around us. It is an integral and central part of our faith and spirituality. Neither separate from spiritual things, nor is it something we do additionally because God wants us to. Rather, how we engage with the world and others is how we practice faith. It is the direct reflection of our relationship with God. Richard Niebuhr, one of the most important Christian theological ethicists of the 20th century, came up with an ethical framework that I think is helpful to consider here. Traditionally, in trying to answer the question, how do we live ethically? How do we live well? There were two major models for human beings. Human the maker, he says. Human the citizen. He really said man the maker and man the citizen, but I'm helping him out here. The first model, human the maker, emphasizes the image of humans as the maker of their own self and their destiny. What good can we bring into this world? What pleasure can I bring into my life? What ideal world can we build? Questions like that matter in that model. The second model, human the citizen, depicts humans as moral agents who do the right thing. Good people follow the law, or the scripture, or the unwritten universal imperative of some sort. These two symbols have merits, but fall short of guiding us in all the different complicated situations of the real world. Right and wrong are often far from clear and contingent on people's point of view, as we all know. And these two models for a human being are based on the perspective of the privileged European landowners who had the power to make oneself in his own image, or to be the dutiful citizen under the laws that he himself helped establish. Niebuhr proposed a more inclusive model, human the answerer. Sounds kind of weird. By the answerer, he does not mean an answer man who has an answer for everything. He writes that the humans are fundamentally responsive beings in the midst of a field of natural and social forces, always interacting, acted upon, and reacting. And our actions are part of these constant interactions, our choices. We are responsive beings who in all our actions answer to actions upon us in accordance with our interpretation of such action, he writes. So in other words, we are relational beings irrevocably connected to the world around us that influences us and acts upon us. We interpret these forces, people's actions, cultures, power structures, whatever those are, circumstances, based on our own personal location and our own history, our perspective. And we choose and act in accordance with our interpretation of what is being done to us. And over time, our actions, our responses to the world around us, they become who we are. It's a reasonable model, right? And this idea is compatible with the biblical self-understanding of Israelites. Jacob, especially in the Bible, is man the answerer in many ways, continuously confronting and being confronted with in the world, always wrestling and striving. He is an important figure in the Bible, whose 12 sons become the 12 tribes of Israel. But as you can see in this family tree that I made, scribbled, even though Abraham is considered a very prominent and important ancestor of people of God in the Bible, it is actually Jacob who is the most direct ancestor of the 12 tribes. In fact, as we will see in today's story, his name is changed from Jacob to Israel. So you could say that the ancient Israelites saw themselves in Jacob. They identified with him. Nevertheless, Jacob is not depicted as a particularly good or attractive person in the Bible. Perhaps it is telling that Israel's most direct ancestor is a younger twin who struggles with his twin brother Esau in their mother's womb. And he loses that battle and is born after Esau, still grabbing onto his heel, the story tells. This is where his name comes from. Jacob literally means he who attacks at the heel, meaning someone who attacks from behind, a deceiver or a supplanter. Fittingly, Jacob makes repeated attempts to take the firstborn right from Esau. First, he tries to buy it with a bowl of soup. Then, with his mother's help, he deceives his blind father Isaac in his old age by pretending to be his brother Esau and steals his father's blessing for the firstborn. When Esau finds out, he is understandably furious and vows to kill Jacob once their father dies. So Jacob runs away to his mother's hometown. And there he meets his uncle Laban, who is another deceptive person, and works for him for 20 years. The two of them constantly trying to outsmart each other. And during those 20 years, he marries his two daughters, Leah and Rachel, and their maidservants, and has 11 sons and a daughter with them. When Laban becomes increasingly exploitive and hostile, Jacob finally decides to come back home with his family and all he owns. And as he finally nears home, he hears that Esau, his brother, is coming to meet him with 400 of his men. And Jacob is now terrified. He has a large family he's traveling with, the women, the young children, servants, livestock, young animals, and everything he owns. He cannot run, he cannot go back. So he sends waves of extravagant gifts ahead of him, trying to win his brother's favor. And that is where today's story picks up. It's from Genesis 32. Let me read it for us. So the present passed on ahead of him, and he himself spent that night in the camp. The same night he got up, took his 2 wives, his 2 maids, and his 11 children, and crossed the ford of the Jabbok. He took them and sent them across the stream, and likewise everything that he had. Jacob was left alone, and a man wrestled with him until daybreak. When the man saw that he did not prevail against Jacob, he struck him on the hip socket, and Jacob's hip was put out of joint as he wrestled with him. Then he said, "Let me go, for the day is breaking." But Jacob said, "I will not let go of you unless you bless me." So he said to him, "What is your name?" And he said, "Jacob." Then the man said, "You shall no longer be called Jacob, but Israel. For you have striven with God and with humans and have prevailed." Then Jacob asked him, "Please tell me your name." But he said, "Why is it that you ask my name?" And there he blessed him. So Jacob called this place Peniel, saying, "For I have seen God face to face, and yet my life is preserved." The sun rose up on him as he passed Peniel, limping because of his hip. It's the famous scene. So Jacob sends off all his family ahead of him into the potential danger that is his brother, and he stays behind. He's all alone, and the narrative takes a strange and sudden turn. Jacob was left alone, and a man wrestles with him until daybreak, who turns out to be God, as is implied when Jacob says, "I have seen God face to face." This mysterious scene is mythic and highly symbolic. In his desperation, with no way out but to face his deepest fear, with the looming possibility of Esau's revenge on Jacob and the destruction of his whole family, Jacob is finally here alone, and he wrestles with a stranger without even realizing that it is God. He wrestles with God and with himself all night to figure out how to respond, how to answer to his current situation, how to answer to his brother whom he has feared and resented all his life, how to confront the danger to his life, his family, his legacy. This is a picture of a responsive being, man the answerer, that Niebuhr talks about. And it is in this struggle that he meets God face to face, intimately and also contentiously. And we see that in the next scene that he is changed through this struggle. The story continues that looking up, Jacob saw Esau coming accompanied by 400 men. He divided the children among Leah, Rachel, and the 2 maids, putting the maids and their children first, Leah and her children next, and Rachel and Joseph last. He himself went on ahead of them, bowed low to the ground 7 times until he was near his brother. Esau ran to greet him. He embraced him, and falling on his neck, he kissed him, and they wept. And Esau asked, "What do you mean by all this company which I have met?" He means the waves of presents that Jacob sent ahead of him. Jacob answered, "To gain my Lord's favor." Esau said, "I have enough, my brother. Let what you have remain yours." But Jacob said, "No, I pray you, if you would do me this favor, accept from me this gift. For to see your face is like seeing the face of God, and you have received me favorably. Please accept my present, which has been brought to you, for God has favored me, and I have plenty." And when he urged him, he accepted. So Jacob now puts himself ahead of his family to meet his brother, limping and bowing low 7 times. He's not scheming anymore. The two brothers finally embrace and weep together. He is like a different person. This change in Jacob is predicted and signaled by the name change in the earlier scene. When the stranger, the divine being, tells him that he will no longer be called Jacob, but Israel, for he has striven with God and with humans and have prevailed. It's a fitting name for a man who has wrestled with everyone all his life, answering, confronting, and scheming from the time he was in his mother's womb to this day. What does it mean that he prevailed? That he won, triumphed? No, clearly he did not beat God in life or in this wrestling match. He does not win against his brother either. They, as we have seen, they reconcile. So I take it to mean that he withstood this wrestling. He was able to face God as he faced others in his struggles to survive and thrive. He did not turn away from this challenge and answered with faith that God sees him and God is with him. He was finally able to stand before his brother and face him. Interestingly, the name Israel can also mean God rules, derived from a different verb that sounds similar. And it is very possible that this was the original meaning of this Hebrew name. But for whatever reason, the storyteller reinterprets this name through the story of Jacob and offers a different meaning and identity for not just Jacob, but for the whole people of Israel who takes on this name. To move from God rules to the one who strives with God and humans and prevails. It's a big shift in their understanding of their relationship with God. It moves from emphasizing God's absolute rule, absolute power over them, to a kind of partnership with God through one's engagement with the world and others. This partnership is sometimes contentious and at other times harmonious, but one is always engaged with God and the world. It is resonant with Niebuhr's idea of human, the answerer. But it includes, on top of that, God in this equation. One strives with God and human, always together. And this is a profound theological statement. Because if struggling with the world is a fundamental part of what it means to live in this world, if we exist in a web of relationships that we can never separate from, always responding and answering, being responded to and being answered to, then that is also where God's presence is manifest most visibly, most powerfully, and most intimately, just as it is in the story of Jacob. Jacob says to Esau, "For to see your face is like seeing the face of God." Here the story connects the scene of Jacob's wrestling with God and his reunion with his brother through the theme of face. He's wrestling with God, a face-to-face encounter in Penuel, which means the face of God, led to seeing the face of God in his brother's face. In Jacob's struggle to respond to his brother, God's presence and love were most deeply manifest, leading to his transformation. Our spirituality, our relationship with God can never exist apart from our relationship with the world and others. How we are in this world is an essential part of our spirituality and our faith. How does that connect to creating space for all to thrive? To create such space, we must wrestle with God to consider our responses and actions toward others, whoever the other person is. We must try to see the face of God in them, to try as best as we can to respond from the knowledge of God's presence with us. And there's more. We must also grant others the space and power to do the same for their lives. We read the story of Jacob, told from Jacob's point of view today, written from Jacob's point of view. There is a flip side to the story. Jacob wasn't the only one striving and responding and meeting God. We must consider that Esau too was engaged with his circumstances, engaged with God, and was blessed by God. He was responding to the actions Jacob did upon him 20 years ago. It is Esau who forgave and embraced his brother. Can we see the next one? Yes. It is Esau who forgave and embraced his brother, and he's the one who answered betrayal with grace. We see his transformation in this story too. We often forget that. And let's also not forget the silent characters in the story, the women, the children, the animals even, servants, and even their late parents. They're all engaged in a web of relations, responding to others around them with whatever limited power that they were allowed. And all of them were also embedded in the complicated, larger context of their world, being acted upon and reacting to it. It's a whole web that cannot be separated from each other. And reconciliation and space where we can thrive, space where we all can thrive, is possible only when there is implicit trust that as we wrestle with God to consider our actions towards each other, we also grant the right and space to others to do the same, to interpret and respond with faith from their own unique perspectives, through the lens of their different identities, history, culture, and social locations. Whether we are queer, a person of color, or an immigrant, a trauma survivor, poor, or a person with a disability, mental health challenges, or whatever our other unique life circumstances may be. We each are empowered and responsible to answer and respond to the world around us in ways that we choose to as we seek and engage with God through love. So we can not only survive, but also thrive and make space for others to thrive alongside us. As part of the practical suggestion today, I would like us to take a moment to reflect on our own life. I'm going to give you a moment to reflect for yourselves in whatever area that might be on your mind at this moment. The worship team can come up now. So the question I have is that in what ways do you relate to the sense of striving with humans, striving with the world and God here right now? Are there any particular relationships that you're thinking about, or the reaction to difficult things going on in the world, which are many? It could be about your circumstances in life, and that you have to make a decision about something, or challenges that you're facing in some areas of your life. Invite God into this struggle as you take a moment. Wrestle with God and see what God might want to say back to you. You can start by writing down your thoughts and feelings about the situation, or quietly saying that to God. The image of wrestling is chaotic. There's no particular steps or right way to do it. Just stay engaged. But as you do, remember that others who are engaged in this struggle with you, they too are figuring out their responses from their own locations and perspectives. And God is with them. Even if you don't understand their point of view, grant them the right to see things from their perspective and choose for themselves. Once you share your thoughts and feelings with God, you can take a moment to hear from God and see if any new insights or thoughts might emerge. The worship team will play quietly for us for a few minutes as you reflect.